Welcome to Lecture 2, Mandatory Policies. This is where we will discuss mandatory policies for your employee handbook. So let's get started talking about the mandatory policies your employee handbook should have. And let me just point out that each policy that we will be discussing is linked to a sample that you may view at any time during this presentation. One of the first mandatory policies that we feel is important is an at-will employment statement. A well-written employment at-will statement is critical because it means you or your employer may terminate the employment relationship at any time with or without notice. This statement is also important because it can protect you against claims for wrongful termination. The next mandatory policy is a right to revise statement. This statement makes your handbook a solid legal document. It also gives flexibility when the employee handbook needs to be changed. The next mandatory policy is the harassment policy. A harassment policy should state how to identify harassment and have a company complaint process to inform management when harassment has occurred. Your policy should conclude that harassment will not be tolerated by any individual. Defining harassment is important because most employees don't know what constitutes harassment. Harassment is understood to be defined as the creation of any hostile or intimidating environment in which verbal or physical conduct is severe or persistent enough to cause significant interference with a staff member's work or education. EEOC discrimination policy. This policy should state that the organization does not discriminate against any employee on any basis and all receive equal treatment without regard to race, color, religion, national origin, disability, veteran status, sexual orientation, gender identity, sex, or age. State and federal laws require you to communicate to your employees about your commitment to employment equal opportunity for everyone. The policy should also state that the company makes good faith efforts to recruit, employ, and promote qualified minorities, women, individuals with disabilities, and veterans. The policy should also state that you forbid sexual and any other forms of harassment or discrimination. The Family Medical Leave Act requires employers with 50 or more employees to provide eligible employees up to 12 weeks of unpaid job-protected leave. It also requires that group health benefits be maintained during the leave. Family medical leave is designed to help employees balance their work and family responsibilities by allowing them to take reasonable unpaid leave for certain family and medical reasons. For instance, when they have a child or adopt a child, when their spouse receives orders for an emergency deployment, or if they have an immediate family member who needs medical assistance. Employees will also use family medical leave when they have their own medical issues and need time off to attend doctor's appointments or recover from sickness or surgeries. The Americans with Disabilities Act is a federal law that was put in place to ensure people with disabilities are treated fairly and with respect. The ADA requires employers with 15 or more employees to make reasonable accommodations for those who need them. Some examples are building a ramp over a small flight of stairs or providing a wheelchair-accessible desk. But an employer is not required to provide personal use items for those that need them, such as glasses or hearing aids. The Fair Labor Standards Act is the federal law used to classify employees versus independent contractors. It determines which employees are exempt from overtime and which are not. It dictates the minimum wage, but you need to check your own state's laws because they are often different than the federal law, and you are generally required to use the law that provides the employee with the highest wage. Sick leave policy. Sick leave is normally provided with pay for personal illness or to care for immediate family members who are sick. Some companies will allow sick leave to be accumulated without limit for use while employed. The accrual rate for sick leave varies per company. Meal period policy. When staff performing non-exempt work are scheduled for a full day of service, an unpaid meal period of at least 30 minutes should be scheduled. Recording and reporting hours worked policy. Staff in hourly paid positions are required to accurately report time worked. When staff submit time worked, they are attesting that such information is accurate. Our final mandatory policy is the disclaimer. The disclaimer seeks to provide a statement that the handbook or any policies within creates an employment contract, binding agreement, agreement to continue your employment, or any other obligation as it relates to employment. And now we will move on to the recommended policies for your employee handbook. That concludes Lecture 2 on mandatory policies. Now we will move on to Lecture 3, where we will discuss policies that are recommended for your employee handbook.